that fantastic Las Vegas welcome. You know, all of us involved with Star Trek are on a high this past week because last Tuesday we saw the final cut of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. And there's a consensus among all of the members of the cast that this one is the very best of all the Star Trek movies that we've done so far. And then Paramount followed that up by flying in something like 36 journalists from all over the world, from Finland, Sweden, England, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Brazil, Mexico, all over the United States, Japan, and Australia. And we had a day and a half of, well, actually two full days of interviews with the international press. And of course, those of us who have been doing conventions in foreign countries know, but there is an intense excitement about Star Trek all over the world. And so that was a heady kind of experience that we had. And then I flew over here yesterday, and that fantastic greeting that everybody gave me here, and I got a chance to share something of what Star Trek VI is going to be about. And then to see all of you here. How many of you were here yesterday? I guess most of you are here for the first time today. So I should repeat some of the things I said yesterday, and those of you that were here then, if you'll bear with me. But this year is the silver anniversary of Star Trek, 25 years. Actually, it's more than 25 years now because it was September 8th, 1991. That was the 25th birthday of Star Trek. And over those 25 years, we have had incredible adventures. But those adventures were possible because of you. You guys are the ones that fueled this phenomenon. Looking over the crowd, I know that a good number of you were there for the first season on TV back in 1966. But I suspect that more than a few of you didn't even exist then. And I know you probably existed after Star Trek 4. We were canceled in '69, and people like you are evidence of the fact that there is life after cancellation. But our fandom has grown and grown with each succeeding year and each succeeding generation. And you are the ones that made this 25th anniversary possible. It was your belief in Star Trek, your belief that this was something that needed to be kept going. There were values and ideals here that were important. It was your energy, your letter writing, your campaigning, and all that effort that finally gave birth to the series of Star Trek motion pictures and to another generation of Star Treks. And you yourselves gave birth to another generation of Star Trek fans. So you have a way of propagating yourselves, and that's how fandom keeps growing. Some of the most enthusiastic teenagers have enthusiastic Star Trek fans for parents. So you guys couldn't help it, huh? The teenagers. You were preordained. It was in the genes. But here we have now a series of 6 motion pictures. Something that's never happened before. Each subsequent motion picture has enjoyed greater popularity, with one obvious exception. And yet, and I want to address this topic here. Many of you may have been hearing of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country being the last of the Star Trek movies. Now, those of you that know the history of all the Star Trek movies, I'm sure you hear the echo of something else in that. Every Star Trek movie has been marketed by Paramount as the last Star Trek movie. The very first one was titled Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The suggestion is that's it. That's the only one. That was released. It made a ton of money at the box office. And so they decided, well, we'll do one more. But sequels generally do about 80% of the business of the previous one, and if it does that, they're going to be happy. Star Trek II, the Wrath of Khan was made. We have so many, it's hard to remember all of them. But Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan was supposed to be the last one. So final that we killed off Spock. And you know we can't have any more Star Treks without Spock. So that's how final Star Trek II was supposed to be. That was released. The box office exploded. It was fantastic. Paramount got greedy. Thank God. Thank God. There is something to be said for greed. And so you started hearing something about a trilogy. Now, a trilogy means 3, right? You can't have any more than 3 because then it wouldn't be a trilogy. But they said, that's a nice round way to end Star Trek. So Star Trek is going to become a trilogy. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, was made. But that was supposed to be the last Star Trek of them all. You saw the Enterprise go down in flames, and nothing could be more final than that, because that's the real star of Star Trek. And so the final installment, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, was released. The box office was galactic. And so they decided, well, we made a mistake with the trilogy. Because, you should have a sense of finality about a trilogy. The Enterprise went down, but we left the Star Trek crew out there on Vulcan. And that's no way to end a story like this. So we'll do the last Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Now that's the end. That was released. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, was the single biggest box office success that we've ever had. It broke all previous records. And so you started hearing rumors of the final Star Trek. It was so final that it was titled The Final Frontier. And it was released. We won't discuss that. But we thought that maybe that was it. Because according to Paramount's very questionable calculations, that lost $30 million. Now, it didn't do too well, but I know it couldn't have lost $30 million. But that was what Paramount said. And so we figured, well, that's not, we had 5 movies, 3 seasons that we can be very proud of, and 2 seasons as an animated series for Saturday morning kiddies consumption. And so that we have nothing to be ashamed of. 5 movies is a fine record. But then some bright executive in the Paramount marketing department thought of something. 1991 is the silver anniversary of Star Trek. And what a wonderful opportunity for marketing. Selling stamps and medallions and t-shirts and underpants and all sorts of things. But then you need a movie in order to sell all those items there. And so that's what saved us. That plus Paramount's belief that you all exist. Now, I don't believe, I know you exist because I've been meeting you on these weekends, many weekends at Star Trek conventions, and we've been trying to convince them that if you make a good Star Trek, it will be successful and it will continue to be successful. However, that same old marketing ploy again. You're hearing rumors of Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country being the last one. Hang on until about late January when the box office is in. Then you'll start hearing another set of rumors of the final Star Trek, number 7. And so it's going to keep going on and on and on like this. And then in the meantime, your children are going to be having your grandchildren, who are going to also be Star Trek fans. So we're ready to do Star Trek 15 and 16 and 17. It may be different. There may be a few adjustments here and there, and of course there will be. And with all the Star Trek, we've had that kind of adjustment. You know, because the important thing that we talked about in Star Trek is time. Time is neutral. It's what we do with it that makes time meaningful. It's what we invest into time. And because we have been investing something into time, you saw, well, this whole phenomenon of Star Trek happened, and the Star Trek plots reflected that. You know, we got advances, we made rank, and in Star Trek 6, you'll see where one particular bright guy got his just desserts. You all know, don't you? Paramount told me that we're not, told the entire cast that we're not supposed to reveal anything of the plot points. But then they released the trailers a couple of months ago. And there it is, that scene where this familiar face is saying, this is Captain Hikaru Sulu of the Starship Excelsior. You know, I mean, so they gave it away. But believe me, one of the reasons why I'm so proud of this one is because it is something, well, it should have happened long ago. It's high time. You know, I was getting worried for Sulu. I mean, you know, he's supposed to have graduated #1 from Starfleet Academy. He's supposed to be very bright, eminently capable, the best helmsman in Starfleet. And yet, for 25 years, he's been at that same console, punching those same buttons, saying, aye, aye, sir, steady as she goes. You know, we're calling him commander now, but he's doing the same thing that he did when he was a lieutenant. So, you know, it reflects on, you know, Sulu. I mean, is he not that bright? You know? I mean, he seemed to be. I mean, he got us out of all those tight spots. At long last, after 25 years, he is where he needs to be. His role model has always been Kirk, and he has inspired him, and he's learned from him, and he's incorporated a great deal. He's observed Kirk working under great pressure and maintaining grace and his cool judgment and his human passion as well. But what you'll see with Sulu, and not just in #6, because we think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for Sulu to boldly go where the Enterprise hadn't been before. But you'll see an aspect of Sulu in this one that you haven't seen before. And what Sulu brings in addition to his observation and learning and apprenticeship under Kirk is his own unique background, his own unique heritage, his own unique experiences. That's going to make Sulu a very unique and distinctive captain of his own, by himself. And he's got a new ship that's bigger than the Enterprise. And it's more powerful than the Enterprise. And it is much, much faster than the Enterprise. You've heard about Transwarp Drive, haven't you? Gave Scotty some difficult challenges, but and you know, if you believe this thing about Star Trek 6 being the last, pay attention to the last scene of the movie. You know, when we have that scene on the bridge, well, this certain captain of this certain ship came to the rescue at the climax of a much torn and tattered and beleaguered Enterprise. And so the captain of the Enterprise, Kirk, has this touching scene with the captain of the other ship on the view screen. And he has his farewell, and then you see this great, glorious ship taking off into the galaxies. And McCoy's watching the view screen, and he says, "By God, that's a big ship." And then Scotty chimes in. Aye, but not so big as her captain, I think. Now, I say that's a pretty wide open ending, isn't it? I mean, that's not a note of finality, is it? So we have this wonderful new movie, and I know you're not going to be disappointed. As a matter of fact, I frankly think that this is going to be bigger box office than number 4 was, and it's going to dictate the return of Star Trek in the guise of number 7. And that is going to give birth to the next one and next one. We believe in what Gene Roddenberry coined, that Vulcan greeting, live long and prosper. We intend to do that. But again, this longevity is thanks to the support that you've given us over all these long years, your energy, and most of all, your love. Believe me, it's very much appreciated, and we feel the responsibility of that. And so we infuse this one with our sense of responsibility to you and our love to you. It's a mutual thing. But with this movie, you will see a dedication at the beginning, and that's because we lost the person who gave us this extraordinary phenomenon. We lost his physical presence, but he has given us a glorious legacy, a big legacy. And some of you may be concerned about his physical absence, but part of his vision was that he knew he was not immortal. And he put into place people that shared that vision that he had, and people who had the kind of talent and, most importantly, the integrity to keep that vision intact. And so with the next generation, there's Rick Berman, and it has been in his hands. Gene has been a consultant for all rights and purposes for the past couple of years. And with Star Trek VI, which I'm sure you'll agree when you see it, is an outstanding Star Trek film that incorporates all of the elements that made Star Trek what it's been. Was produced by Ralph Winter, a person that I have great admiration for. He's a down-to-earth guy just like Gene was. And he's an enormously talented guy. And so he left us not just his legacy of Star Trek, but other artists and other people that can continue to give life and a future to that vision. Gene was a big man in every respect. I lost a personal friend. I mean, he was a physically big man as well. And you know, like when he would grab you in that embrace of his, it was really almost suffocating because he was so big. He was a vigorous, dynamic man. He used to be a policeman, and he had that policeman's strength, physical command, and that strong walk. And the last year and a half has been very difficult because he'd been hit by a series of small strokes. And to see this big man reduced in little bits and pieces, first his speech became slurry. This articulate, eloquent man lost the ability to articulate his thoughts with clarity. And then he had another stroke that confined him to a wheelchair. But he was so determined not to be confined to that wheelchair that he took therapy, and he got to the point where he could get up and lean on a cane and have his male nurse on the other side and walk. But that strong policeman's stride had been reduced to an old man's mincing shuffle, you know, that kind of thing. And it was painful to see that happening. And so although his passing was a jolt, it was not unexpected. But I think we should take joy in the fact that this great man did leave us so much. He left us Star Trek, and he left us people who can continue that vision. And I think that's the other thing that motivated us to invest as much as we can. And that's why we want Star Trek 6 as a tribute to Gene Roddenberry to be that kind of success that he could be proud of, and that would ensure that longevity that he saw for his baby, his child. 2 days before he passed on, Gene came down to the studio and saw the final cut of Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. And he was very, very happy. And so we can all take comfort in that fact. Star Trek 6, the last Star Trek movie that he consulted on, that he was a part of, and that he saw, came off the way he wanted it to, and he was very happy. And so we can be very proud of that, and proud of the fact that we're all one great big huge extended family. We're all connected now. We have a kinship beyond just blood kinship. In many ways it ties us, you know, because we're connected in terms of something even more visceral. An idea. A positive, good, affirmative idea. And we're moving into a world where that idea becomes more and more important. We're moving into a world that's going to be very challenging in many, many ways. Without revealing too much, Star Trek 6's theme is the enormous complexity and the enormous difficulty of making peace. Making war is easy. Making peace is very difficult. That's the kind of world that we're going into now. Every headline we see, whether it was the headlines of a few years back on which actually the plot of this film is based, what's happening in the Eastern Bloc nations and in Soviet Russia, or Soviet Union, it was based on that. But then, even more recently, the agonizing struggle to find peace that we see in the Middle East with the Arabs and the Israelis trying to find some way to live together in peace. And then more recently, what's been happening in Southeast Asia with Cambodia, Prince Norodom Sihanouk coming back to Cambodia and making some kind of rapprochement with that killer regime of the Khmer Rouge. You know, if you saw the movie The Killing Fields, you saw what a barbaric regime that is and was. The piles of human skull that they created without any sense of guilt or responsibility or morality. And yet, we have to go to bed together with people like that, a regime like that, in order to create peace. And it's very difficult, it's very daunting. This is the kind of challenge that we face in this time of ours today. And this is what Star Trek 6 addresses. It's a very important theme. But Nick Meyer and all of the other people involved with this project have not made just an important theme movie because, first of all, it's a rip-snorting good space opera. Number two, it is a wonderful whodunit. There's something terrible that happens, and you don't know who did it. And it's very important that we find out who did it because that person or thing or being might do it again. And for another thing, it's a spine-tingling good political thriller. It is a good movie, and you will have a grand time with it, as well as an opportunity to say, Star Trek lives. Thank you all very much. Now the dialogue is a part that it's a lot of fun because you guys pop things, you know, and I don't feel so inhibited. Before, when before they made the previews, we had to play a fencing game with you guys because we couldn't reveal too much of the plot. But and I don't intend to reveal too much of the plot. I'm sure you wouldn't want to know. You want to make that discovery yourselves. So, but let's engage in a little discussion, conversation here. Yes, right there.
You and the original crew you've been known over 25 years as being the Enterprise crew. Okay, in the subsequent movies, have you felt any kind of responsibility towards the integrity of your character? Like saying, well, he wouldn't say that, he wouldn't do that. And have any of the other characters been that way at all?
Well, you know what? It's not just with the movies. We had to do that particularly with the TV series. Because with the TV series, we had directors who, weren't regulars with the show. I mean, they could have been, this one particular director could have been directing a Western last month. And the month before that, he might have been directing a detective series. And, these people would be coming on board to Star Trek without knowing anything. Well, no, they did some homework and they knew something of it. But we had to do a lot of educating of the directors in the TV series. So, oh yes, I mean, the integrity of the show, that goes without saying. I mean, I take that little, as a kind of a feather ruffler, because yes, we have integrity. We've had integrity from the time that we were a TV series, and we've been maintaining that, and that's why the movies have come off the way they have. If we didn't, I don't think you'd be coming back to see it. Yes, the pink cat.
I have heard that Gene Roddenberry has plans for next generation. Do you know if he has plans to do any kind of draft on that?
The question here is, he's heard that Gene Roddenberry had plans for a next generation, and do we know anything about that? From whom did you hear something like that? Because well, don't believe everything you read. That's one of the first maxims. And what kind of magazine was that to begin with? I mean, if it was Inquirer, you can believe the opposite of what they said. No, don't believe everything you hear and everything you read, and don't believe everything you hear either. You got to consider the source. Gene believes that there's a lot of life in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and there's a lot of life in us too, although we've been getting a lot of criticism about how we're getting old and how we're getting decrepit and how we're getting long in the tooth and all that, But you'll see from, part of the, I think that's part of the charm of Star Trek: My Generation. You've kind of grown old with us, haven't you, for 25 years. And you've grown a little decrepit with us. And your teeth have gotten a little bit longer with us. And you may have grown as some of my colleagues have grown. I think you've got to be bigger people, as well as some of my friends becoming bigger stars. So, that's part of the charm, to have lived through a span together and to have shared a life together. And so, I think there's a whole lot of drama in our generation, maybe coping with some of the human challenges that confront us as time goes on. But at the same time, with the passage of time, we've gained some wisdom, and the ability to give some good guidance too. So I think there's a lot of stories that can be told with our generation and also with the next generation. And no, there's been no talk of a next generation yet. Yes?
Yes, two quick questions. Do you have fencing experience? Because you seem to be very agile in a couple of the episodes.
I've always said Star Trek people are very observant and discerning. He said, do I have any fencing experience? Because he noticed that in a few episodes I was quite agile. Well, as a matter of fact, from the time I was a kid, I was a swashbuckler fan, and particularly the film Robin Hood with Errol Flynn as Robin Hood swept me away. And as a matter of fact, I came home and had my mother make me a Robin Hood outfit. My mother's here someplace. My mother loves Las Vegas. And when she heard that I was coming here, she came along. And she's somewhere in the audience here right now. But she made me a Robin Hood costume. and my backyard became Sherwood Forest. So I've been kind of, let's pretend fencing from way back, from my childhood. But about a month before we did the Naked Time episode, the writer of that episode came down on the set, John D.F. Black, and we were just sitting around the set, and he said, George, I'm working on a script right now in which the characters' inhibitions get broken down and we act out our most suppressed fantasies. And I'm thinking of having Sulu start accosting everybody with a samurai sword. And I said, well, yeah, that's ethnically consistent. But I said, Sulu is a 23rd century guy, and George Takei here is a 20th century, third generation Japanese American, and I didn't grow up on samurai movies. I went to see Errol Flynn and Burt Lancaster as the Crimson Pirate, and Gene Kelly as D'Artagnan and the Three Musketeers. And I said, Sulu being a 23rd century person, wouldn't it be more logical for him to not see his heritage so narrowly, ethnically, but, a much broader, wider human history, a heritage of the human civilization. And, what about giving Sulu a fencing foil? And he said, yeah, that's a great idea, and that's good science fiction. Incidentally, do you fence? Now, the first thing anyone in this business should learn is you never ask an actor if we do anything, because we are experts at everything. I said, it's my favorite sport. I've been doing it way back. That night, I had the Yellow Pages out, looking for fencing lessons. That next Saturday, I took my first formal fencing lesson. But as a matter of fact, Star Trek opened up another wonderful aspect of my life, because the person that I found in the Yellow Pages turned out to be the man who choreographed the fencing sequences in Errol Flynn's Robin Hood. And he had doubled for Basil Rathbone, because Errol Flynn didn't want to fence with Basil Rathbone. He didn't trust him. He wanted someone who really knew his stuff to, Flynn, I'm told, was a very good fencer himself. And Mr. Faulkner, my coach, being one of the outstanding fencers, that's why that scene came off as well as it did. So I got not only a chance to meet him, but he was really an inspiration, because he was a man in his 70s then, and yet he was in perfect physical condition, very agile, a great physique, great posture, ramrod straight, wonderful shoulders and pectorals, and great sense of balance. And he was really an inspiration. He lived into his 90s, and he was still coming to the studio even in his 90s. So Star Trek had a way of opening some wonderful doors for me that I would not have, had opened it unless Star Trek did it. Yes, right in the uniform. Do we have a different uniform in the Excelsior? No, it's the same uniform. Starfleet, our generation, has the same uniform. So I wear the same uniform, my crew wears the same uniform, but with only the appropriate Excelsior designation. Right here.
Yes, did Captain Sulu have any insight that he was going to be a captain on Star Trek 6?
The question here, for those of you back there, is did Captain Sulu have any insight that he would be the captain of the Excelsior in Star Trek 6? As a matter of fact, not only insight, Commander Sulu had been lobbying for that from way back. In fact, in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, we shot a scene where Sulu does get his command, and it was the Excelsior. But unfortunately, that got cut out. And, that was devastating to me. But I don't let devastation faze me, I just picked myself right back up, and I began that lobbying campaign again. And I think I recruited a lot of you to join in with me on that. I got you to write into Paramount Studios. Yeah, let's go way back there.
Do you plan on doing any episodes with Next Generation?
Do I plan on doing any episodes with the Next Generation? I think that's a very well done show. Its tone is a little bit different from our generation. And yes, we've set the pattern of many of my generation appearing on it. First, it was Dr. McCoy, although he appeared as a 140 or 137-year-old crotchety, cranky, grouchy, you know, and you know he didn't take care of his hair at all. That was a fright wig he had on top. And I certainly can't say too much for his dermatologist, you know, those paunches and bags and sags all over his face. You know. I don't want to appear like that. I've told Rick Berman that on Star Trek 4, we've demonstrated the fact that we can slingshot back in time. And there's no reason why we can't slingshot forward in time so that Captain Sulu can appear on the Next Generation as I look right now. Yes, it was during the hiatus between the first season and the second season of Star Trek that I did the Green Berets with John Wayne and David Jansen, Jim Hutton, Bruce Cabot, a whole lot of people. John Wayne is one of the great legends of the motion picture lore. He's the epitome of what a Hollywood leading man is. But John Wayne is essentially John Wayne. He's exactly like that off screen. And he has the ability to bring that charismatic quality that he has right on screen with him. But he has to be cast appropriately because he's not really an actor. He's a personality. If you saw the movie The Conquerors, in which he played Genghis Khan or Kublai Khan, you know, I mean, there was John Wayne, and he may have been wearing a fur hat instead of a cowboy hat, you know, and he may have had a little kind of shooting shoulders and things like that, and he had a Fu Manchu mustache on, but he looked like he was doing a Halloween play. It was John Wayne that came, you know, striding on with that John Wayne walk, and there'd be Susan Hayworth there lying down on that couch, and this Kublai Khan would say, "My blood tells me this woman is for me," you know, and his Fu Manchu mustache is kind of jumping up and down, you know. It was difficult to believe that he was really that Mongolian general. So he has to be cast appropriately, but when he's cast well, he is a compelling personality. And the Green Berets was a John Wayne production for all rights and purposes because he wasn't just the star of the movie. He was the producer, he directed it, and we had a script written by Claire Huffaker, but he threw it out, and he was making it up as we were going along, you know, and he does do it in his way, you know. He says, all right, George, you go over there and say such and such, and I'll go over here and do such and such, and then he would see that I wasn't quite where he wanted me to be. He says, no, George, right here. You know, he would just put me where he thought I should be, you know. Very John Wayne. He's a down-to-earth, very decent, and very simple and honest guy. And what you see is what you get with John Wayne. Right there.
Also, along with that, I'd read that during that hiatus period when you were working on that film, that a lot of roles that may have been written for you that next season were given to the Chekhov character.
That's right.
Could you elaborate on that?
That was one of the downsides of doing the Green Berets. I really enjoyed working with John Wayne and the other actors, and we shot that on location in Georgia, thank God. I mean, we didn't go to Vietnam to shoot that. That would have been a very, very unhappy location site. But the one unfortunate thing about shooting in Georgia, we were hit by rain. That was unexpected and got us way behind schedule. I was supposed to have been finished with the Green Berets in time for the beginning of the second season, but I couldn't get back in time. So they did bring in Walter Koenig as Chekhov, and he got a lot of my lines. About 4 or 5 of the episodes at the beginning of the season, which I regretted, but at the same time, if I couldn't do it, I'm glad Walter got a chance to do it and got a chance to really establish his character, you know, because I suspect that he would not, the character of Chekhov may not have been established so strongly if I had been back and Sulu were doing his thing. So I'm happy for Walter that he did get a chance to get his character well established. Yes, in the black.
2 questions.
Oh, you're both in black. Okay, you're next. Go ahead.
2 questions. How is Mrs. Roddenberry and little Chicky continuing to act in the series in the computer voice?
Major Barrett Roddenberry is doing well. She's a very strong woman, and she also feels the responsibility to Gene Roddenberry. So yes, she is continuing the legacy of Gene Roddenberry.
Also, if I may, do you have an official explanation for my second generation here? The extent of the makeup that the Klingons wore 25 years ago was a goatee and mustache. Now they're wore. What was the evolution? What's the explanation of the evolutionary change?
And there is an explanation. For those of you way back there, the question is, what's the explanation for the evolution that the Klingons seem to have gone through from the TV series to today? When Gene first conceived of the Klingons, he saw them as reptilian beings with a kind of a horny ridge, you know, beginning from the nose going all the way back. And he submitted this to NBC. When they saw that, they were aghast. Not only because, you know, they looked horrific, but because, well, primarily because that would have been staggeringly costly for them. Because here we are doing a TV series which has a limited budget. And when you have these elaborate makeup jobs, you know, on actors, and particularly characters that are going to be coming back, that means that these actors have to show up way before the other actors. You know, and particularly the kind of makeup that Gene envisioned was about a 3-hour makeup job, which meant that the actors would have to be coming in about 3:30 in the morning in order to be able to get started at the time the rest of us, you know, would get started. But that also meant the makeup men and women would have to come in half an hour earlier than that. You know, like 2:30, you know. And that meant that these people, both the makeup people and the actors that came in that early, would be into overtime by lunchtime. That, you know, only half the day would be gone, and these people would be making fantastic money, time and a half, because they came in so early. And if they did that on a regular basis, that would blow, destroy the budget that they had. So they told Gene, you know, you can make that point by just making them a little greasy and ugly and hateful and, you know, filthy, you know. Just make it look like they smell terrible, and that's enough, you know. And so that's why we got the economy style Klingons in the TV series. But when we got to be feature films with the bigger budget, then Gene went back to his original idea. He said, now I can have my original Klingons the way they should look. And he worked that into the budget. And so that's why with the movies, you got to see the Klingons looking much, much more interesting. And the original conception of Klingons as Gene envisioned them. In the red.
How do you feel about the New York 14 movie combining your generation and the next generation?
The question is, how do we foresee a movie combining my generation with the next generation? As a matter of fact, in Star Trek VI, you will see some foreshadowing of that happening. It still happens in our time. It's just a few years after Star Trek V. But this great seismic movement with the Klingon Empire begins, and there is a character in Star Trek VI, a Klingon character, that is played by an actor from the next generation. However, he is not playing that same character that he plays in the next generation, despite the fact that this character has the same name. And if I sound cryptic, I intend to. You have to go see the movie to find out what I'm talking about. Some of you may know already because it's been leaked. You're nodding. Yeah, it's Michael Dorn, and he is playing a character named Worf, but it is not the Worf that you know from the next generation. Yes, over there.
Okay, I was wondering, do you see any resemblance or similarities between yourself and the character?
Do I see any resemblance or similarity between my character and me? When I look in the mirror in the morning, I see both me and Sulu. Sulu looks an awful lot like me. Yes, I see a great resemblance because the same guy plays that character. Is that what you were driving at? As what? Personality. Well, you know, in terms of the character of Sulu, Hikaru Sulu, was created by Gene Roddenberry. And Gene created all of the characters that you see. Gene cast all of the actors from my generation in our roles. But we are actors playing a part. And it's flattering for you, for us to know that you think that we're one and the same. But one very strong distinction is Sulu is known as one of the best helmsmen, or used to be known as one of the best helmsmen in Starfleet. Knows everything about the helm console, and he knows the technology and the science and the engineering, right? George Takei, 20th century, living in 1991 right now, does drive a car. However, when George Takei has something go wrong with a car, he will get out and lift the hood and look and frown and, you know, make all those faces at what he sees underneath the hood. And he may touch a few things and jiggle a few things with seeming authority. But he doesn't have the foggiest notion what he's doing. I don't know the first thing about what makes a car run. I do drive it because I know that you stick the key in and you turn it and it makes a sound, right? This is the brake, and this is how you make it turn right, and this is how you make it turn left. So there is a definite difference between George Takei and the character of Hikaru Sulu. We're actors playing a part right there. Okay, you're first and you're next.
You talked about physical similarities, some character similarities. What about how, I guess, Star Trek in general is
Yes, well that's the key, isn't it? Gene Roddenberry, when he interviewed us, it was very interesting the way I walked out of that interview when I first met Gene back in 1965, thinking that I didn't have the part because of the way he interviewed. It was a very casual conversation. He asked me nothing about my acting career or my experience as an actor, anything like that. We talked about books, current events, about movies we'd seen, things like that. What he was doing was he was trying to find out something about us, how we thought, what we were as human beings, in addition to being competent actors. the vision that Gene Roddenberry has with Star Trek is he sees the Enterprise, essentially, the Starship Enterprise, as a metaphor for Starship Earth. The Enterprise and Earth is made up of all different kinds of people. It's a pluralistic society with different backgrounds, different histories, different looks, different ethnicity. And he says that that's the strength of the Starship Enterprise. It's the ability to tap various options in terms of problem solving, in terms of innovation, in terms of creativity that makes forward movement possible. Our strength is our wide array of choices of talents and vantage points and heritages that makes it possible for us to meet our challenges. It's also our diversity that makes for the spice of life. Because we're different, it's more engaging, it's more interesting. It's not a bland, homogeneous, tasteless thing. And that vision of Gene's I share very much. He also has a vision that's some say optimistic, others say positive. I say an essential view of how we've got to face the future. Because the alternative is gloom and doom. We've got to have confidence in our talents, our ability to be creative, our ability to be problem solving, our ability to be innovative, to move ahead. And so much of science fiction depicts our future as a failed civilization. People groveling in the ruins of a past great civilization. The Starship Enterprise is the farthest thing from that. And I do share that vision of his. I think all of the members of the Star Trek cast, whether it's my generation or the next generation, deeply believe in that. And we live in a time today when that is so desperately essential, because there is so much gloom and doom. We've befouled our universe. There's this the pollution of our atmosphere that's global now. It isn't just in one state or one region. It moves from one place to another. We have this thing called the greenhouse effect that's changing climates and turning what used to be wonderful forests into drought-stricken areas, and what used to be swampland into very dry areas. So it's a very worrisome time that we're living in. We are using technology as our own weapon against ourselves. We are using our aggressiveness as a weapon against ourselves. We're finding that we need to really get a hold of our creativity and our problem solving to deal with the mess that we've created. And so, I very much share Gene Roddenberry's vision as well as Sulu's vision. And I see my cue here, so let me just do one more, and then I'll call it quits, and we'll sign autographs, and we'll get the chance to get together. Yes, right here.
I was just wondering, are you upset that in the 24th century, the next generation is supposed to be so far advanced in a worldwide thing? Are you upset that there aren't more minorities integrated into the next generation?
Am I upset that there aren't more minorities integrated into the next generation?
Yeah, because
I do think it's not realistic in that respect, because even right now in American society we have great change happening, and the mix, this wonderful soup of people that we have in this country is rapidly changing. And I do think that the next generation is making an attempt to reflect that, but it's not reflecting it like a mirror reflects it. But so yes, your observation I think is very well taken. Well, on that note, I think time is marching on, and I know you'd want me to sign autographs for all of you, so live long and prosper. Thank you for 25 good years, and thank you for your support.
Outside life, you can get a better shot?
Yeah, would please.
Yeah, that's better. That'll work.
Thank you.